our Minecraft worlds tell a story. Today, I will be touring my Minecraft Forever world. The builds in this world range from beautiful to downright bizarre, and we will explore all of them. I think we're best to start off at the earliest build, and as we tour the world, the builds will get progressively better. Along the way, I'll also be sharing some advice on how you can keep your own Minecraft world going long term, and some advice for making your world more aesthetic. Thank you guys so much for subscribing, and shout out to all my channel members. With that being said, let's get into it. Our story starts off where this world began. Loading into this world, this Minecraft world started off very ordinary. I didn't realize it at the time, but this would end up becoming my longest played Minecraft world. Up until this point, I'd only kept a Minecraft world for maybe 1 or 2 weeks at a time before getting bored of it and just completely deleting it. So one of the first tips I want to give you guys is that the longer you play a Minecraft world, you're just going to naturally get bored of it. So one of the major things I can say is that it's okay to take breaks. The main thing is just not deleting your world. So starting off, I traveled alongside a river and I found a village by a lake. Thankfully, the villagers were very friendly and they allowed me to take some supplies. I noticed a cave nearby the village, so I decided that'd be a perfect place to set up a home. It's kind of a Minecraft tradition that your first home should be in a cave. It doesn't look like it now, but this cave started off just like any other ordinary Minecraft cave, very dark and full of hostile mobs. But over the course of time, I slowly secured the cave and I made it more homey. I was always a fan of lush caves and I decided to make my own, decorating the cave with grass blocks, glow berries, amethyst clusters, and even adding some cherry trees as well as various plants and flowers. Sitting next to this warm campfire, we have 2 unnamed dogs, so I want to do something kind of special. Leave your guys' dog name suggestions in the comments, and if I end up using your dog name, I'll give you a shout out in the next video, and it will forever be part of this world. Bonus points if your dog name is based on a real life dog or has some sort of backstory. I'd love to hear your suggestions. What's kind of interesting is before placing the cherry trees and flowers, these patches of grass were actually farmland. In the early game, before I had an abundance of resources, growing melons and trading with the local villagers was a way for me to get emeralds. It wasn't the most efficient way to get emeralds, but it worked. And I've since found better ways to acquire resources, and I no longer needed the farmland down here, which is when I decided to add the cherry trees and really start making this cave more of an aesthetic build rather than something that was functional. Another tip I want to give you guys is that once you build something, that doesn't necessarily mean it has to stay that way. A great way to spend more time in your Minecraft world is revisiting your old builds and redecorating them. Off of the main room here, we have a farm left over behind some tinted glass, and you may notice the use of amethyst as decoration. Luckily for me, nearby there is an amethyst geode that we can find just by swimming through this waterfall. And just over here, we have an axolotl sanctuary with a nice panoramic window into the main atrium. Heading out of the axolotl sanctuary and up the stairs, we have a small armor display. This was the first world where I beat the Ender Dragon and got fully enchanted gear, so this display just showcases some of the armor available in the game. Also on display, I have additional items like banners, music discs, and various mob heads. Directly across from my display is my nether portal. Now, it's nothing too fancy, but it is functional, and the nether acts as a highway system for me to quickly access the outer reaches of my base. Later on, I want to show you an area that I have planned where I want to build a much nicer and more decorative nether portal, but for now we have this one. Directly underneath the lush cave is my skeleton spawner. Now I'm sure most of you guys are acquainted with skeleton spawners, and these are excellent for gaining items early game as well as repairing equipment that have the mending enchantment. But what makes these skeleton spawners special is there's actually 2 spawners that are next to each other. I've never seen 2 spawners so close to each other. Early game, finding these spawners was truly a blessing, and I always had an abundance of bones and arrows that I could use. And when I finally got my mending gear, this made sure all of my equipment was fully repaired and ready to use. Down here is where I also collect a lot of deep slate cobble. It gives the kind of room this strange ambience. Alright, let's head back up. As we're making our way back up, we pass through a small observation room that allows us to look into the skeleton spawners through tinted glass. In order for skeleton spawners to work, they need to be in complete darkness, and the tinted glass allows us to peek in without disturbing the spawners. Taking the water elevator up leads us directly into a nice river that flows through the cave, and directly alongside the river is my storage room. Now, there's no automatic sorting or any fancy redstone work, it's just some chests and some signs, and for my purposes, it helps me keep my items organized. On the other side, we have some smelters, as well as an infinite lava source using dripstone. One of the best ways to smelt items is using buckets of lava, and this setup allows me to infinitely smelt items and constantly replenish my fuel source. The storage room is very plain, but I love the inclusion of these ambient overhead lights. Making our way to the end of the storage room, we can swim through this water, and I can briefly show you one of the many expansive caves of this world. I'll also leave the world seed and additional information in the description, so if you'd like to play along and build in this world, feel free to. Directly off of the storage room is a narrow hallway that has the glow of amethyst shining through cracks in the wall. This hallway leads to my water elevator, which acts as a centralized hub to my base. When I designed this base, I designed it with accessibility in mind, so all the pathways around the base lead to this water elevator. This water elevator has multiple floors, so let's ride this up to the first stop. Here at the first landing, you can see we have multiple pathways that we can take. We have a staircase that leads to some woods, a hallway that leads through some catacombs to a graveyard, an additional room, and then a pathway leading to the village. But let's start off by heading up these stairs. The story behind this room is I flattened out this mountain, and this was originally going to be the site for my home. I ended up not going with that idea because I wasn't happy with how it looked, so now I just had a really empty flat piece of land carved in the mountain. I decided to line the walls of this cave with tinted glass, and I just sort of followed along the natural curvature of the mountain. I also decided to add some bamboo as well as end rod lights throughout, and as a result, now we just have an empty glass room that's in the center of the base. You can also see some cherry trees lined out just outside of the glass, and for some reason, this room really reminds me of a museum. Earlier, I pointed out that I was thinking of a place where I could build a proper nether portal, and this is what I'm going to use that room for. Another tip I can give you is you don't necessarily have to finish all of your builds, and the longer you have a world, the more it's going to change. So if you're building something, don't be afraid to change your plans, or if you're getting bored of it, you can always leave it and come back to it later when you have more ideas. Alright, heading back through the water elevator room, we can head over this beautiful arched bridge into my village. When I first started this world, I didn't really have experience building in Minecraft, so it's kind of cool to see how my builds have progressed over time, and that's one of the many benefits of having a long-term Minecraft world. Nobody starts off as an expert, so it's really fun to look back and see how your building style changes. The village is comprised of just a couple of village homes that are lightly decorated, and there's a well in the middle courtyard here. Now the village actually has a secret, which I'll share with you a little bit later on. An easy way to make your builds more aesthetically pleasing is using depth. So these village homes look fairly nice, but they are just basic 5x5 or 7x5 rectangles and squares. In order to make the homes look a little nicer, I decided to add things like walls and slabs just to add more depth to the builds. And by doing simple things like this, you can turn your very blocky builds into something that looks a little bit nicer. If I was to stay in the village, I think I would personally choose this home. I think this is the coziest and it has the nicest view of the central courtyard. Alright, let's follow this pathway out of the village and to the town graveyard. So the graveyard was one of the first things that I built in this world, and I'm not really sure why I built it, but for some reason, I was really compelled to make a graveyard, and I'm happy with how it turned out. You can see some soulfire columns and soul lanterns spread throughout the graveyard, giving it a nice blue glow at nighttime. There's also a centralized obelisk that aligns perfectly with my tower. The tower houses my water elevator and acts as a centralized location to the base. You can see some stars above the tower, and that's actually a constellation which has a really personal story tied to it, which I can share with you when we make it to the top of the tower. Making our way through the graveyard and into the catacombs, this was actually the first time I textured my builds, so you can see I used some andesite blocks and stairs to texture the walls and make the catacombs look a little bit more interesting. It's not the best build ever, but I'm happy that it's preserved the way that it is to showcase how far my building skill has progressed. So these catacombs were where my bed was, And the idea was, after my character died, he'd wake up in the town catacombs to start a new life. But there's a problem. Even though I could place the bed and set my spawn point, after I died, there wasn't actually enough room for the game to spawn me in. So I would end up spawning at the world spawn way off in the distance, and I'd have to trek back to my base. So my initial idea didn't work out, but I decided to keep the catacombs anyways because I feel like it'd be a nice connector to the water elevator. So from here, let's cut back through the village and let's head to the other side. A common theme you may notice is how accessible and interconnected this world is. When I designed this world, I wanted to make sure every pathway could connect to itself and that the entire base was walkable. I often spend time listening to music or my favorite YouTube videos in the background, just walking around the world, coming up with more ideas, and having these pathways throughout makes it really easy to do that. Just on the other side of this gate is a pathway that leads nowhere. And a tip I want to share with you if you're ever struggling to find ideas for your Minecraft world is give yourself random projects. This is a great way to get creativity flowing. A problem I always had was I would spend so much time trying to think of ideas that I wouldn't end up building anything. But I found out just by building random pathways or buildings, you tend to come up with more ideas and it really gets your mind going. And it's also an easy way to spend more time in your world. A plan I have for this pathway is I eventually want to cut through the mountain and connect back to the village that I stopped in at my first night. Down the staircase here is another random project I gave myself. Like I said, I often spent a lot of time just listening to my favorite music or audiobooks and building various tunnels and pathways throughout the world. And this overlooks into a really huge cave that I eventually want to turn into this sort of arena. So I'll leave it completely dark and I can go down there and fight anytime I want. This world for the most part is very secured, so I think it'd be fun to have this sort of sense of danger and this wild area that I can go to and test my combat skills. Down the staircase is a ravine, and this is just above the lush cave that we were at in the beginning. I really love how my world kind of revolves around this ravine. I eventually want to turn this ravine into another lush area, but for now it's just an empty pathway. Climbing our way up out of the ravine, we can find a staircase that leads us back to the village. Cutting between these two village homes, we can make our way to the Rainbow Sheep Farm. Along the way, we passed by my skeleton horse. I don't really ride him that much. He's more of a trophy piece for me, kind of like a Ferrari. So this stable here was actually built for me by my brother, and at one point this world was a multiplayer world that I shared with my younger brother. But like most multiplayer worlds, we both got kind of bored of playing it, so I turned it back into a single player world. So I love having this stable here because it just adds to the world's story. Making our way down the staircase here, we enter the sheep farm. Originally, I had all the sheep cooped up in a glass room, but I thought it'd be nice to have them roam freely. So here we have every color of sheep, and I'm able to collect every color of dyed wool from the sheep farm. And from the sheep farm, we can see a nice view of the river that leads into my base, as well as some additional pathways and a boathouse that we're going to make our way to later. So you may remember I mentioned that the village actually has a secret. Making our way back up towards the staircase towards the village, if we head off the path, we can find this hole in the ground, and this looks into my sewer tunnel. So there's multiple ways into the sewer system. One way is we can obviously just drop down here, but if we return to the village well in the center of the courtyard, we can actually swim through, and this takes us directly to the sewer. Now, I built this sewer system in survival mode, and honestly, it took way too much time, but I'm happy with how it turned out. This sewer tunnel runs along the entire length of the village and the surrounding areas, and I sort of use it as this underground highway system. So I've had this Minecraft world for so long that it's kind of interesting to reflect on how much my real life has changed since I've started this world. At the time, I didn't even have a YouTube channel, and I never intended on showing anybody this world. So it was really just a way for me to fill the emptiness of my life, and it definitely did that. And I'm really happy that I'm able to share the story of this world with you. So as I was building the sewer system, I came across this room where I found an Enderman placing grass blocks. Well, it turns out this room actually overlooks my cave system, and I never knew this overlook existed. So I was definitely a fun surprise running into this as I was building my sewer. An obsession I have is making 1x1 tunnels to crawl through. I'm not sure when they added this mechanic to the game, but it's something I love adding to my world, and I love adding this sense of adventure. This tunnel leads out to the river that we looked at earlier, and from the surface, you couldn't really tell this is actually a tunnel. Checking out the boathouse here, this is another thing that my brother actually built for me, and it has a beautiful view onto the river. Just up from the boathouse, we enter the wooded section of my base. Now, this particular section of my base has a funny story associated with it. When I was first starting off my channel, I spent a good hour documenting how I built this pathway, sharing my thoughts on how I texture things, all in real time with live commentary. And when I came back to check the recorded footage, I found out that it was stuck on the pause screen, with my commentary just being played over it. Needless to say, that video never got uploaded, but it's just one of the many stories that this world has. Heading through the tunnel is a pathway that was just on the opposite side of the river. This pathway leads to some farms that are mainly for decoration. Now you may notice some stars above the pathway, and these are the same ones that are above the base. I thought it'd be really cool if I took those stars and added them along certain pathways, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. So these stars are just tinted glass with amethyst clusters on all sides. Continuing through the woods, we're in the central connector area of the pathways. So this pathway leads back up to the village, this one leads back to the water elevator, and this one leads to a gatehouse and my mansion. What is kind of special about this central pathway is one of my most viewed videos at the time was actually a screenshot of this pathway, and I used it as a thumbnail, so that's a cool little story. Alright, taking the stairs up to the gatehouse, you can see the stars continuing along the pathway, and another tip I want to share with you guys to improve the aesthetics of your Minecraft building is to start off very simple and then come in after the fact and decorate. A problem I had when I started playing is I would try to build completely finished buildings from the beginning, but I shifted my mindset to building very simple shapes and then coming in after the fact and decorating them, and that's kind of how I constructed this gatehouse. So I started off with 2 squares, and then I came in after the fact and started adding more depth to the build, and I think it turned out really cool. Inside the gatehouse is my 2 named dogs, and these are my real life dogs, which are often sitting next to me while I'm recording videos. So this gatehouse is sort of just a storage room. It's mainly for decoration. Now just past the gatehouse is my unfinished mansion. Like I said, I leave a lot of builds unfinished. So the idea for this is I wanted to build something that had a lot of substance and weight to it and was very reminiscent of an old Minecraft beta type mansion. So very blocky and very simple, but for now it remains unfinished. Alright, let's head back to the tower and ride the elevator to the top so we can explore the other half of the base. Coming up to the top of the tower, we have a beautiful view of the entire base as well as a closer look at the constellation. So these stars are actually my rendition of the Pleiades constellation, which is part of my zodiac sign. At the time when I built this, I was really into zodiac signs, and some of my enchanted gear is even named after stars. Off in the distance, we can see some larger buildings on the cliffside, and here's where I want to introduce another tip. I've had this world for so long that I was getting kind of bored of playing in survival mode, and at first I was really hesitant to turn the game into creative mode, but after some time, I decided that it'd be better to play on creative mode if it meant that I'd get more time in the world. So my main tip is play Minecraft however you like. If you're feeling bored, feel free to turn on creative mode. Just because you built something in creative mode doesn't mean it's any less impressive than if it was built in survival mode or in hardcore mode. So the cool thing about this tower is you can either choose to take the water elevator up, or there's also slabs on the edge of the tower that allow you to walk up the entire thing like a staircase. Dropping down to the first floor is a small mountain pass. This little mountain trail kind of divides the 2 halves of my base, and it's just a simple trail that connects from my tower to my little tavern. Along the way, there's also the small storage room underneath the ground that overlooks the cherry grove, and this is right above that glass room we were at. Crossing over this glass bridge brings us to the tavern. Now I feel like this tavern was when I really learned my style of building, and the tavern kind of has a strange shape to it. I didn't really plan it out, I just sort of followed the natural terrain generation, and that's what gave this building such a unique shape. And ever since then, I've just been building in this style, just very freeform, starting off very simple, and then coming in after the fact and trying to make it all work. And now that it's starting to rain, I feel like this is the perfect time to step inside. The tavern has a really warm and cozy kind of feel to it, and I'm happy with how it turned out. I actually have a longer video on this channel where I showcase building this tavern in real time while I was sharing my thoughts and design process. On the second floor is some rooms that you can stay at, and on the third floor is actually an attic. And one of the things I really like doing is having contrast in my builds, so the attic is very cold and dark compared to the warm hearth of the tavern below. I included a lot of things in the attic like cobwebs and skulls and soul lanterns, and it gives the space a really cool kind of vibe. If you follow this crawl space, you can actually find a chest that I placed here with a named sword and some additional items. My story behind this is I'm really inspired by RPG games like Skyrim and Oblivion, and I thought it'd be really cool if there was a chest up here with hidden gear. Another tip I can give you guys if you're feeling bored of your Minecraft world is give your world a story. I thought it'd be really cool to have a tavern after traveling through that cold mountain road and be a nice place to stop for the night. So since Minecraft is a sandbox game, you're really free to build your own story and make the world something special to you. And I find that having a storyline makes it so much easier to figure out what to build next. Next is the ruined castle that's in the middle of this courtyard. This was one of my favorite builds for a long time, and it's kind of the centerpiece to this valley. Now, the only way to access it is using the elytra, and I love doing this, adding a sense of adventure to the world by making places that are only accessible using specific gear, for example. So just underneath the ruins of this castle is a hidden stash room that was my home for a little while. Alright, now let's check out the mansion that's on the other side of the mountains here. So this mansion was one of the first things I built in creative mode, and just like the tavern across the valley, I just sort of followed the landscape and built my walls up. And as a result, it gave the mansion a really interesting shape. So again, using story as a way to come up with ideas for my world, this mansion is kind of a haunted mansion that you find in the woods, and I want to fill it with pillagers and all kinds of different items. Maybe I want to leave a chest in here with really high-end gear, so it's kind of like this dungeon location from Skyrim, for example. But for now, the mansion is empty and waiting for me to come back and actually decorate it. From the ground level, the mansion is actually so big that it actually eclipses the towers and the stars behind it, so I really love that. Following this cozy little pathway through the woods, we cross over a small footbridge and pass over a small waterfall that leads us to a farmhouse. One of the benefits of having this world so close-knit is that no matter where you look, you can see landmarks across the world. Off in the horizon, I have a small trading village where I do most of my trades for enchantments, and the storyline that I'm going for right now is I want to make a path from that village to my base. But as you can see, my base is completely surrounded by water. The only way to access it is by going over that glass bridge that we crossed out by the tavern. So I want to make a path from the village to my base, and along the way, I want you to encounter interesting little rest stops. Anyways, that's the full world tour. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this longer, more scripted type video. Thank you guys so much for subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.